The stage lights dimmed as the bustling energy of the studio crew settled into a hushed anticipation. Behind the scenes, Stephen Colbert paced back and forth in his dressing room, glancing occasionally at the monitor showing the eager audience filing into their seats. Tonight's guest was someone he had been wanting to interview for years, Keanu Reeves. Known not just for his iconic roles in blockbuster films like The Matrix and John Wick, but also for his quiet humility and introspective nature, Keanu had become something of an enigma in Hollywood. Colbert adjusted his tie in the mirror, his mind racing with ideas about how to approach the conversation. He knew Keanu wasn't one to reveal much about his personal life, especially when it came to topics like faith or spirituality. Yet these were exactly the areas Colbert wanted to explore. In his years as a late-night host, Colbert had built a reputation for tackling sensitive subjects head-on, often using humor and wit to navigate tricky terrain. But tonight felt different. There was a sense of challenge in the air, a chance to push boundaries while keeping things entertaining. As Colbert reviewed Keanu's background notes provided by his research team, he couldn't help but feel intrigued. The actor's journey was far from ordinary. Born in Canada to a multicultural family, Keanu had experienced profound loss early in life: the death of his best friend River Phoenix, the passing of his sister, and other deeply personal tragedies that shaped his worldview. Despite these hardships, Keanu remained grounded, choosing to live simply despite his immense wealth and fame. Rumors swirled about his spiritual inclinations, though he rarely spoke about them openly. Some said he practiced Buddhism. Others claimed he leaned toward Christianity. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear: Keanu valued privacy when it came to matters of faith. Colbert scribbled a few questions on his notepad, carefully crafting phrases designed to coax Keanu out of his shell without making him defensive. He knew the key would be striking a balance between curiosity and respect. "Let's start light," he muttered to himself, jotting down icebreaker questions about Keanu's latest film projects. Then, after building rapport, he planned to ease into the heavier territory. How does he reconcile his beliefs with the demands of Hollywood? Colbert wondered aloud. Does he ever feel pressured to conform? Meanwhile, across the hall, Keanu sat quietly in his green room, scrolling through messages on his phone. Unlike most celebrities who arrived with entourages, Keanu preferred solitude before big appearances. He sipped herbal tea, dressed casually, in a black leather jacket and jeans, looking every bit the unassuming star fans adored. For Keanu, interviews weren't just promotional opportunities, they were moments of connection. He believed in speaking honestly, even if it meant revealing little. Authenticity mattered more to him than pleasing everyone. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was one of Colbert's producers, reminding him they'd be going live in 10 minutes. Keanu nodded politely, thanked her, and stood up to stretch. As he walked toward the stage, he could hear the muffled cheers of the audience growing louder. The excitement was palpable. Little did he know, this evening would take an unexpected turn, one that would test his resolve and leave a lasting impression on millions. Backstage, Colbert took a deep breath, centering himself before stepping onto the brightly lit set. The band played its upbeat intro and the crowd erupted into applause as he emerged, waving enthusiastically. After exchanging a few jokes with the audience to warm them up, Colbert turned his attention to the guest waiting patiently in the wings. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the legendary, the incomparable Keanu Reeves," he announced, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. Keanu strode onto the stage, greeted by thunderous applause. His signature half-smile lit up the room as he shook hands with Colbert and settled into the plush chair opposite him. The two exchanged pleasantries, their easy banter setting a light-hearted tone for the interview. For now, everything seemed perfectly normal. But behind the polished facade of smiles and laughter, both men knew the real conversation was yet to come. And as the cameras rolled, neither could predict how profoundly this exchange would resonate beyond the confines of the studio. The interview began with the kind of warmth and energy that made late-night television so appealing. Stephen Colbert, ever the charismatic host, leaned forward in his chair, his eyes twinkling as he greeted Keanu Reeves with genuine admiration. "Keanu, it's such a pleasure to have you here tonight," Colbert said, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "You're one of those rare celebrities who seems to exist on another plane, like you're not fully part of this world but somehow still manage to grace us with your presence." Keanu chuckled softly, his trademark humility shining through. "Thanks for having me, Stephen. It's always fun to chat with you." His tone was calm and measured, yet there was an unmistakable sincerity in his words. The audience erupted into applause, clearly thrilled to see their beloved star up close. For many, Keanu wasn't just an actor. He was a symbol of kindness, resilience, and quiet strength. A figure who seemed almost mythical in an industry often defined by ego and excess. Colbert wasted no time diving into lighter topics, knowing how important it was to ease Keanu into the conversation. He started by praising Keanu's recent work, particularly his role in John Wick. Chapter 4. "I have to say, watching you take down bad guys in that movie is like watching poetry in motion. You make killing people look, dare I say, artistic." The comment drew laughter from both the audience and Keanu, who grinned sheepishly. "Well, it's all about the choreography," Keanu replied modestly. "The stunt team works incredibly hard to make those scenes come alive. I'm just lucky to be part of it." His answer was typical Keanu, gracious, self-effacing, and quick to credit others. Colbert nodded appreciatively, clearly enjoying the dynamic between them. From there, the conversation shifted to Keanu's enduring legacy in Hollywood. Colbert brought up The Matrix, asking Keanu what it felt like to be part of a film franchise that had become a cultural phenomenon. When Neo first appeared on screen, he changed the game, not just for action movies but for storytelling as a whole. "Did you realize at the time how groundbreaking it would be?" Keanu paused thoughtfully before responding. "Honestly, no. At the time, we were just trying to tell a good story and do justice to the Wachowskis' vision. But looking back now, it's amazing to see how much it resonated with people. Neo's journey, the search for truth, the battle against control, it speaks to something universal, doesn't it? We all want to break free from limitations, whether they're external or internal." The audience murmured in agreement, clearly moved by Keanu's insight. Colbert seized the moment, leaning in slightly as if to bridge the gap between casual banter and deeper reflection. "That's beautifully put, Keanu. And speaking of universal themes, you've always struck me as someone who thinks deeply about life's bigger questions. You've been through so much. Loss, challenges, moments of triumph, and yet you carry yourself with this incredible sense of peace. Where does that come from?" For the first time during the interview, Keanu hesitated. His expression softened and he looked down briefly, as if gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that silenced the room. "I think it comes from understanding that life is fleeting. Nothing lasts forever. Not success, not pain, not even the people we love. So I try to focus on what matters most, being kind, staying present, and finding meaning in every moment." Colbert tilted his head, intrigued by the depth of Keanu's response. "Finding meaning," he repeated slowly, letting the phrase hang in the air. "Is that where faith comes in for you? Because I know you've talked about spirituality in the past, though you've always kept it pretty private." Keanu smiled faintly, his gaze steady. "Faith is personal," he said simply. "It's not something I talk about much because it's sacred to me. But yes, it plays a role in how I navigate life. It gives me perspective, helps me stay grounded when things get chaotic." The audience erupted into applause, clearly touched by Keanu's candor. Colbert joined in, clapping along before steering the conversation back to safer ground. They discussed Keanu's passion for motorcycles, his love of literature, and his dedication to helping others, topics that showcased his multifaceted personality without venturing too far into uncharted territory. Yet beneath the surface, Colbert couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. He admired Keanu's restraint, his ability to share just enough without revealing too much. But as a seasoned interviewer, Colbert also knew that the best conversations often happened when guests were pushed slightly out of their comfort zones. And so, as the segment neared its midpoint, Colbert decided to test the waters, probing gently but deliberately. "Keanu," he began, his tone shifting ever so slightly. "You mentioned faith earlier, and I can't help but wonder, how do you reconcile that with the demands of Hollywood? This industry isn't exactly known for embracing vulnerability or introspection. Do you ever feel like you have to hide parts of yourself to fit in?" The question hung in the air, heavier than anything Colbert had asked so far. Keanu's smile faded momentarily, replaced by a look of quiet contemplation. For a brief moment, the studio fell silent, the only sound the faint hum of the cameras capturing the exchange. Then, with characteristic poise, Keanu responded, "I don't believe in hiding who I am," he said firmly, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Hollywood may have its expectations, but at the end of the day, I answer to myself and to something greater than myself. If that means some people don't understand me, then so be it. Living authentically is worth more than any approval." The audience erupted once again, this time with even louder applause. Colbert smiled, nodding, as if satisfied with the answer. But deep down, he sensed that the real challenge was yet to come. The energy in the studio shifted as Colbert leaned forward, his expression taking on a more serious tone. The light-hearted banter of the earlier segment had given way to something deeper, more probing. Keanu's response about authenticity had resonated with the audience, but Colbert wasn't ready to let the topic drop. He sensed an opportunity to push further, to explore the boundaries of what Keanu was willing to share, and perhaps even challenge him. "Keanu," Colbert began, his voice softer but deliberate, "you said you don't believe in hiding who you are. That's incredibly admirable. But let's be honest, Hollywood can be, well, unforgiving. It's an industry that often rewards conformity over individuality. Have you ever felt pressure to downplay your faith or any part of yourself to fit in, to avoid standing out too much?" The question hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and unavoidable. For a moment, Keanu didn't respond. His eyes flickered slightly as if weighing how much he wanted to say. The audience grew quiet, their collective attention fixed entirely on the man in the chair opposite Colbert. Even the stage lights seemed dimmer somehow, as though the room itself was holding its breath. Finally, Keanu spoke, his voice calm but measured. "Stephen, faith is personal. It's not something I wear on my sleeve, but it's also not something I deny. If someone asks me about it directly, I'll answer honestly. But I don't feel the need to broadcast it either. My beliefs are between me and, well, something greater." Colbert nodded slowly, clearly intrigued by the response. But instead of letting the moment pass, he pressed on. "But doesn't that put you at odds with the industry sometimes? I mean, think about it. Faith can be polarizing. Some people might not understand it, or they might judge you for it. Wouldn't it be easier just to keep it hidden?" Keanu's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of quiet resolve. He took a deep breath before answering, his words carrying a weight that made the audience lean forward in their seats. "I've never believed in doing things the easy way, Stephen. Life's too short to live for convenience or approval. Faith isn't a costume you put on when it suits you, it's part of who I am. And if being true to myself means some people won't agree with me, then so be it." The audience erupted into applause, their cheers filling the studio with a wave of support. Colbert paused, seemingly taken aback by the strength of Keanu's conviction. He glanced briefly at the teleprompter as if searching for his next line, but quickly recovered. "That's a powerful statement," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But I have to ask, why bring faith into everything? Why not separate your personal beliefs from your public persona? Isn't that what most celebrities do?" Keanu tilted his head slightly, his expression thoughtful. "Separating my faith from my life would mean separating it from my decisions, my actions, my relationships, and I'm not willing to do that. My faith informs how I treat people, how I handle challenges, how I approach my work. It's not compartmentalized. It's integrated. Trying to separate it would feel dishonest." The audience murmured in agreement, many visibly moved by Keanu's candor. Colbert, however, wasn't ready to back down. Sensing that he was nearing a pivotal moment in the interview, he decided to take a bolder approach. "But here's the thing, Keanu," he said, his tone sharpening slightly. "You're sitting here on national television right now. Millions of people are watching. Do you think bringing up faith in this setting alienates some viewers? Or, worse, do you worry it makes them uncomfortable?" For the first time during the interview, Keanu's demeanor shifted. His usual calmness remained intact, but there was a subtle firmness in his posture, a sign that Colbert had struck a nerve. He looked directly at Colbert, his gaze unwavering. "If talking about faith makes someone uncomfortable, that's their choice, not mine. I'm not here to make anyone feel a certain way, but I also won't pretend to be someone I'm not just to avoid controversy. That wouldn't be fair, to me, or to the people who trust me to be authentic." The audience erupted, again this time with even louder applause. Many stood up, clapping wildly as if to show their solidarity with Keanu. Colbert, sensing the tide turning, tried to pivot the conversation back to safer ground. "Of course I respect that," he said quickly, forcing a smile, "and I admire your commitment to staying true to yourself. But tell me this. Do you ever worry that being so open about your beliefs could hurt your career? After all, Hollywood thrives on image." Keanu exhaled slowly, his patience beginning to wane. "Stephen, if my career depends on hiding who I am, then maybe it's not the right career for me. Success isn't worth sacrificing integrity. I didn't come here tonight to debate whether my faith belongs on TV. I came to connect with people, to share moments of honesty. If that makes some people uncomfortable, then that's okay. Growth often starts with discomfort." The audience roared in approval, their cheers echoing through the studio. Colbert forced another laugh, attempting to lighten the mood. "Well, I guess you've made your point loud and clear," he said, gesturing toward the cheering crowd. "But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about—" Before he could finish, Keanu interrupted gently but firmly. "Stephen, I appreciate the questions, really, but I think we've covered enough on this topic. Faith is deeply personal, and while I'm happy to share my perspective, I hope people understand that it's not something I discuss lightly." Colbert froze for a split second, clearly caught off guard by Keanu's directness. The audience, however, continued to applaud, their support unwavering. Realizing he'd pushed as far as he could without risking further tension, Colbert raised, his hands in mock surrender. "Fair enough," he said with a nervous chuckle. "Let's move on." Though the interview continued, the tone had changed irrevocably. Keanu's responses had drawn a line in the sand, one that Colbert had inadvertently crossed. As the cameras rolled and the conversation shifted to lighter topics, it was clear that both men were acutely aware of the unspoken tension lingering in the air. And while Colbert may have intended to provoke thought, he had inadvertently sparked something far greater, a testament to the power of staying true to oneself no matter the cost. The atmosphere in the studio had shifted dramatically. What had started as a light-hearted, engaging conversation now felt like a high-stakes exchange, with both men navigating uncharted emotional territory. Keanu's calm demeanor remained intact, but there was an unmistakable firmness in his posture, a quiet signal that he wasn't going to back down. Colbert, sensing the weight of the moment, tried to steer the conversation toward safer ground, but Keanu wasn't about to let the issue drop without addressing it fully. "Stephen," Keanu began, his voice steady and resolute, "I understand your curiosity, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective, but this isn't just about me. It's about something bigger. Faith isn't a debate topic or a marketing strategy. It's part of who I am. And if being true to myself means some people won't agree with me, or even dislike me, then so be it." The audience erupted into applause, their cheers filling the studio with an electric energy. Many stood up, clapping wildly as if to affirm Keanu's stance. For a brief moment, Colbert looked almost startled by the intensity of the reaction. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly aware that he had pushed too far. Yet rather than backing off entirely, he attempted to lighten the mood with humor. "Well, Keanu, Colbert said with a forced chuckle. You certainly don't pull any punches when it comes to staying true to yourself. I guess that's why they call you the internet's boyfriend, huh? The comment drew scattered laughter from the audience, though it lacked the genuine enthusiasm of earlier moments. Even Colbert seemed to realize that his attempt at deflection fell flat. Keanu didn't laugh. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, his expression softening but no less determined. Look, Stephen, I'm not here to argue or make anyone uncomfortable, but I also can't compromise on what matters most to me. My faith shapes how I live my life, how I treat others, how I face challenges, how I find meaning in the chaos. It's not something I can separate from who I am. Colbert nodded, though his smile faltered under Keanu's unwavering gaze. I hear you, Keanu, and I respect your convictions. But doesn't that put you at odds with an industry that thrives on image? Doesn't it make things complicated? Keanu sighed softly, his patience wearing thin but still evident in his measured tone. Complicated? Sure. Challenging? Absolutely. But none of that changes the fact that I have to stay true to myself. If I were to pretend otherwise, if I were to hide parts of who I am for the sake of fitting in, I'd lose sight of what really matters. Success, fame, approval, they're all temporary. Integrity is forever. The audience erupted once again, their applause louder and more passionate than before. Many shouted words of encouragement while others simply stood in awe of Keanu's poise and conviction. Colbert glanced around the room, clearly aware that the tide had turned against him. He tried one last time to regain control of the narrative. Okay, Colbert said, raising his hands in mock surrender. You've made your point, loud and clear. Let's talk about something else. Maybe your next project, or your love, for motorcycles. How does that sound? But Keanu wasn't ready to move on just yet. With quiet authority, he responded, I'd be happy to talk about those things, Stephen, but I think it's important to acknowledge what we've discussed tonight. Faith and authenticity in general isn't always easy to talk about, especially in settings like this. But avoiding difficult conversations doesn't make them go away. Sometimes leaning into discomfort is where real growth happens. The audience erupted into another standing ovation, their cheers echoing through the studio like thunder. Colbert sat back in his chair, visibly flustered but attempting to maintain composure. He forced a smile and gestured toward the crowd. Well, folks, it seems we've struck a nerve tonight. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. Authenticity is everything. His words sounded hollow, even to himself, and the audience's continued applause only underscored the awkwardness of the moment. Realizing he had little choice but to pivot, Colbert steered the conversation back to lighter topics. They briefly touched on Keanu's upcoming films, his passion for motorcycling, and his charitable work. Yet, despite the shift in subject matter, the tension lingered in the air like a storm cloud refusing to dissipate. Every word Keanu spoke carried an added weight, a reminder of the powerful exchange that had unfolded moments earlier. As the interview neared its conclusion, Colbert thanked Keanu for joining him on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you here, Keanu. You bring such depth and thoughtfulness to every conversation. Thank you for sharing your insights with us tonight. Keanu smiled warmly, his earlier resolve softening into gratitude. Thank you, Stephen, for having me. And thank you, he added, turning to face the audience, for your support. Conversations like these remind me why connecting with people is so important. We may not always agree, but we can still learn from each other. The audience erupted into one final thunderous round of applause as Keanu rose from his chair. He shook Colbert's hand politely before waving to the crowd and making his way off stage. As he disappeared behind the curtain, the energy in the studio remained palpable, a testament to the impact of his words and the courage of his convictions. Back on stage, Colbert took a deep breath, visibly reflecting on what had just transpired. He turned to the camera with a wry smile. Well, folks, that was something, wasn't it? Keanu Reeves, everyone, a man of integrity, humility, and undeniable wisdom. Let's give him another round of applause, shall we? The audience obliged enthusiastically, their cheers lingering long after the segment ended. Though the interview had taken an unexpected turn, one thing was certain. Keanu's bold response would leave a lasting impression, not just on the audience, but on anyone who valued the importance of staying true to oneself in a world that often demands conformity. As the final moments of the interview unfolded, the tension in the studio was palpable. Stephen Colbert, typically unflappable and quick-witted, seemed to be searching for a way to gracefully wrap up what had become an unexpectedly charged conversation. Keanu Reeves, on the other hand, remained composed, his calm demeanor unchanged despite the intensity of the exchange. The audience, still buzzing from Keanu's earlier remarks, sat riveted, sensing that the most memorable part of the evening was yet to come. Colbert attempted to steer the discussion back to safer ground, asking Keanu about his upcoming projects and his love for motorcycles. But Keanu wasn't ready to let the deeper themes of their conversation fade away so easily. With quiet determination, he interjected gently but firmly. "Stephen," Keanu said, his voice carrying a weight that commanded attention. "Before we move on, I want to say one more thing. Faith isn't just something I believe in, it's something I live by. It guides my decisions, shapes how I treat others, and gives me strength when life gets hard. If I were to hide that, or downplay it, I'd be living a lie. And that's not something I'm willing to do, not for ratings, not for applause, not for anything." The audience erupted into applause once again, their cheers filling the studio with an energy that felt almost electric. Many stood up, clapping wildly as if to affirm Keanu's unwavering stance. For a moment, Colbert looked almost startled by the sheer force of the reaction. He glanced briefly at the teleprompter, as if hoping for guidance, but quickly realized this was a moment that couldn't be scripted or controlled. "Well, Keanu," Colbert began, his tone shifting slightly as he tried to regain some semblance of control. "You certainly don't mince words when it comes to staying true to yourself. I think everyone here tonight, myself included, can learn a lot from your example." His words were sincere, but there was an undercurrent of discomfort in his voice, a subtle acknowledgement that he had perhaps pushed too far. Keanu nodded thoughtfully, his expression softening. "I appreciate that, Stephen. And I know you didn't mean any harm by your questions. They're important ones, and they deserve thoughtful answers. But sometimes, the hardest truths are the ones we need to hear. Authenticity isn't always easy, but it's worth fighting for." The audience roared in agreement, their applause echoing through the studio like a tidal wave. Some shouted words of encouragement, while others simply stood silently, moved by the depth of Keanu's conviction. Even Colbert, who prided himself on his ability to navigate tricky conversations, seemed momentarily speechless. He took a deep breath before continuing. "You're absolutely right, Keanu," Colbert said, his tone now tinged with genuine admiration. "Authenticity is rare these days, especially in an industry where image often trumps substance. You've reminded us all tonight that staying true to yourself isn't just admirable, it's essential." Keanu smiled faintly, his gaze steady. "It's not just about me, though. Everyone has their own journey, their own struggles, their own beliefs. We don't have to agree on everything to respect each other. What matters is that we show up as our authentic selves, and that we give others the space to do the same." The audience erupted into another standing ovation, their cheers louder and more passionate than ever before. Colbert joined in, clapping along as he turned to face the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it one more time for Keanu Reeves, a man who doesn't just talk the talk but walks the walk. Thank you, Keanu, for sharing your wisdom and your heart with us tonight." Keanu stood up, shaking Colbert's hand politely before turning to address the audience directly. "Thank you all for your support," he said, his voice warm and heartfelt. "Moments like these remind me why connection matters so much. We may come from different places, believe different things, and walk different paths, but at the end of the day, we're all human, and that's something worth celebrating." The audience responded with thunderous applause, many visibly emotional as they rose to their feet once again. Keanu waved graciously before making his way off stage, disappearing behind the curtain, as the energy in the studio reached a fever pitch. For a brief moment, Colbert sat alone on the set, reflecting on what had just transpired. He leaned forward in his chair, looking directly into the camera. Well, folks, Colbert said with a wry smile, that was unforgettable. Keanu Reeves, ladies and gentlemen, a man of integrity, humility, and undeniable courage. Let's give him one final round of applause, shall we? The audience obliged enthusiastically, their cheers lingering long after the segment ended. As the cameras cut to commercial, the buzz in the studio remained palpable. Crew members whispered excitedly among themselves, while social media lit up with reactions from viewers who had watched the interview live. Clips of Keanu's bold responses quickly went viral, sparking widespread praise for his authenticity and criticism of Colbert's aggressive line of questioning. Backstage, Keanu exhaled deeply, leaning against the wall as he processed the events of the evening. Though he had expected the interview to be challenging, he hadn't anticipated just how deeply it would resonate with people. A member of Colbert's team approached him tentatively, offering thanks for his participation and apologizing for any discomfort caused during the conversation. Keanu simply smiled, brushing off the apology with characteristic grace. "It's okay," he said softly. "These conversations are important. They remind us to stay grounded, to listen to each other, and to honor what matters most. Sometimes growth happens in the uncomfortable moments." Meanwhile, backstage, Colbert sat quietly in his dressing room, replaying the interview in his mind. He knew he had crossed a line, pushing Keanu further than perhaps he should have. Yet, he also recognized the value of the exchange, the raw honesty it had sparked and the powerful message it had delivered. As he prepared to return to the stage for the next segment, he made a mental note to address the controversy head-on in future episodes, acknowledging both the risks and rewards of tackling sensitive topics. By the time the credits rolled and the audience filed out of the studio, it was clear that the night's events would leave a lasting impression. Keanu's bold response had not only ended the interview on a high note, but had also ignited a broader conversation about faith, authenticity, and the courage it takes to stay true to oneself in a world that often demands conformity. And as the echoes of applause faded into the night, one thing was certain: this was an interview no one would soon forget. The aftermath of the interview rippled far beyond the confines of the studio, sparking a wave of reactions that dominated social media, news outlets, and conversations across the globe. Within hours, clips of Keanu Reeves's bold response to Stephen Colbert had gone viral, drawing millions of views and igniting passionate debates about faith, authenticity, and the role of public figures in shaping cultural conversations. On platforms like Twitter and Instagram, hashtags such as Keanu Stands Firm and Authenticity Matters began trending worldwide. Fans flooded the internet with praise for Keanu's unwavering commitment to staying true to himself. "This is why we love him," one user tweeted. "In a world full of pretense, Keanu reminds us what real integrity looks like." Another wrote, "He didn't have to say anything, he could have brushed it off, but he chose to stand his ground. That's leadership." Not everyone agreed, however. Some critics defended Colbert, arguing that he was simply doing his job as an interviewer by asking tough questions. "Colbert pushes boundaries, it's what makes his show interesting," one commentator noted. Keanu knew what he was getting into when he sat down for the interview. Others accused Colbert of crossing a line, suggesting that his line of questioning bordered on disrespectful. "You can ask thought-provoking questions without pressuring someone to compromise their beliefs," a viewer remarked. Colbert should have known better. Amidst the online chatter, traditional media outlets picked up the story, analyzing every nuance of the exchange. Late-night talk shows dedicated entire segments to dissecting the moment, with hosts weighing in on both sides of the debate. Jimmy Fallon joked about it on The Tonight Show, saying, "When Keanu says authenticity, you listen. Colbert learned that the hard way." Meanwhile, Trevor Noah used the incident as a springboard to discuss broader issues surrounding celebrity interviews, questioning whether hosts have a responsibility to tread carefully when discussing deeply personal topics. For Keanu, the whirlwind of attention was nothing new, but he handled it with his characteristic humility. A day after the interview, he released a brief statement expressing gratitude for the outpouring of support, while reiterating his belief in the importance of staying true to oneself. "I'm overwhelmed by the kindness and encouragement I've Received, he wrote. Faith and authenticity are deeply personal, and I hope this conversation inspires others to embrace who they are, unapologetically. Stephen Colbert, on the other hand, faced mounting pressure to address the controversy directly. During his next episode of The Late Show, he opened with a heartfelt apology, acknowledging that his line of questioning may have made Keanu, and some viewers, uncomfortable. As an interviewer, my goal is always to spark meaningful conversations, Colbert explained. But last night I think I pushed too hard. Keanu handled it with grace and wisdom, and I'm grateful for the reminder that sometimes the most important lessons come from moments of discomfort. Colbert's apology struck a chord with many viewers, who appreciated his willingness to own up to his misstep. However, opinions remained divided. While some praised Colbert for addressing the issue head-on, others felt his apology didn't go far enough. It's great that he admitted fault, one fan commented, but I still think he shouldn't have put Keanu in that position in the first place. Despite the mixed reactions, the incident undeniably strengthened Keanu's reputation as a man of principle. For years, fans had admired him for his quiet generosity, resilience in the face of adversity, and refusal to conform to Hollywood norms. Now, his bold response to Colbert solidified his status as a cultural icon, a figure who represented not just talent and charm, but also moral clarity and steadfastness. In the weeks that followed, the interview continued to resonate in unexpected ways. Religious leaders cited Keanu's words during sermons, using them as examples of how faith can coexist with modern life. Mental health advocates highlighted his emphasis on authenticity, encouraging people to embrace vulnerability rather than hide behind societal expectations. Even educators incorporated the clip into classroom discussions, challenging students to reflect on the value of staying true to oneself in a world that often prioritizes image over substance. For Colbert, the experience served as a turning point. Known for his sharp wit and fearless approach to sensitive subjects, he began to refine his interviewing style, striking a more thoughtful balance between provocation and respect. Future episodes of The Late Show featured deeper, more introspective conversations, earning praise from audiences who appreciated the shift toward meaningful dialogue. As time passed, the dust settled, but the impact of the interview lingered. It became a touchstone moment in pop culture, a testament to the power of authenticity and the courage it takes to defend one's beliefs in the public eye. For Keanu, it reinforced his legacy as a man who valued truth above all else. And for Colbert, it offered a valuable lesson in humility, reminding him that even the best intentions can sometimes lead to unintended consequences. Looking back on the evening months later, both men reflected on the experience with a sense of mutual respect. In a rare follow-up interview, Keanu acknowledged Colbert's professionalism and thanked him for creating a platform where difficult conversations could take place. "Stephen didn't mean any harm," Keanu said. "He was trying to explore something important, and I appreciate that. Sometimes these moments teach us more than we expect." Colbert echoed similar sentiments, praising Keanu for handling the situation with dignity and poise. "Keanu taught me, and everyone watching, that authenticity isn't just admirable, it's essential," Colbert shared during an appearance on a morning talk show. "I'll carry that lesson with me for the rest of my career." Ultimately, the interview transcended its original context, becoming a symbol of the ongoing struggle to navigate faith, identity, and authenticity in a rapidly changing world. It reminded audiences that even in moments of tension and discomfort, there is room for growth, understanding, and connection. And perhaps most importantly, it underscored the idea that staying true to oneself isn't just a personal choice, it's a gift to the world, inspiring others to do the same. As the curtain closed on this chapter of their lives, both Keanu Reeves and Stephen Colbert emerged stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the profound impact of their words and actions. The interview may have ended that night in the studio, but its message would continue to resonate for years to come. A timeless reminder of the power of honesty, courage, and the enduring human spirit